Okay, folks, we're here again. First episode of 2021. Jim Thompson and myself here to talk to one of our cronies about their life with Robert Burns. Today we've got Bob Baillie with us. Bob's a regular performer on the Burns Supper circuit and will be well known to many of you. To get us started, Bob, how about telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I was born during the war. Not the Boer War, as some people say, but the Second World War. I was born in Kilmarnock, but raised in Galston till the age of 4, and then I got out before I was too badly affected. Now, we moved to Kilmarnock, and I was there until I got married in 1967. Since then, I've had 8 happy years of marriage out of 53. That's not a bad average. So I moved from Kilmarnock to Anbank, from Anbank to Ayr, and then I came up to Mauchline in 1973. Had a brief sojourn away for a couple of years. That was like 6 years ago, and came back to Mauchline, and here I will stay until they carry me out in a basket. I think that I was at Grange School in Kilmarnock and went from there to Kilmarnock Academy. I had a place at university until 4 weeks before I was due to leave school. Somebody said to me, "Do you think you could put up with another 4 years in a classroom?" To which I said, no. So I went and got in touch with the county council and said to them, "What jobs have you got?" And they offered me the sanitary inspector's department, the architect's department, or the assessor's department. So I contacted my cousin who was in the measurer's department, which was quantity surveying, and he said, "You want to be in the assessor's office because they're never in. They're out and about and they get paid for their lunch." So that's where I went and qualified. That was in 61. I qualified as a surveyor in 67. I was with the council right up to 73. Then I was with Bellingham. Then with DM Hall. I've also had a business in Malone. And I worked as a consultant for Halifax, but all in surveying. And I'm still doing troubleshooting with title deed plans. So I'm still involved in the surveying side of things. And that's it. That's a sort of potted history. I've been married, as I say, since 1967. I've got 2 kids who are now 49 and 47. So that makes me realise what age I am.
And you want to give them a name check?
Stuart and Kirsten. One's in Kirkcaldy and the other's in Abu Dhabi. I don't know who's worse off. But my daughter in Abu Dhabi can't get out of Abu Dhabi just now, and she keeps sending us messages about how she's lying in the beach at the club and sending us photographs of the slap-up meal she's having, and I think she's got the best of it.
Certainly, if she's enjoying lying on the beach, it's a lot better than it looks outside here.
Well, she was complaining the other day because the temperature had dropped to 24 and it was positively chilly. And that's not 24 Fahrenheit, that's 24 centigrade.
She'd need to wear a summit in that weather.
Ah, exactly.
So you told us a little bit about the family. What about yourself? What about hobbies and interests, Bob?
Well, I golfed a lot as a youngster, and then I became involved in motorsport. And whilst I still played golf up until last year, I'm no longer really fit to play golf. I was a rally navigator. I competed in rallies. I competed in driving tests. I competed in autocross, which is grass racing. I was the president of East Ayrshire Car Club for quite some time. I'm now involved with the Veterans of Scottish Motorsport, and I'm the chairman of the Veterans of Scottish Motorsport. And this is all old codgers like myself who have been either rally drivers, racing drivers, or whatever, hill climbs, etc. And we try and have the meetings probably every couple of months. We call it, we're actually a limited company as the Veterans of Scottish Motorsport, and we have directors' meetings that unfortunately we haven't been able to have any this year. And I was vice chairman from the setup started. I became chairman last year, and then everything shut down. So there must be a moral there somewhere.
So the veterans about your era and not the cars era.
Our era, as people, I was involved when I was the chairman or president of East Ayrshire Car Club. I was directly involved with the running of the Culzean Classic Vehicle Show, which was the largest show of vintage and veteran cars in the west of Scotland. And when it started off, for the first 2 or 3 years, Bryce Curdy, who used to be with West Sound and STV, did the commentary. But I've actually had to sit there beside him and feed him all the information, so that people were getting it second hand. So then we decided it would be best if I did that. So I then did the commentary every year as well until Culzean folded, unfortunately. And so did, about 3 years later, so did the East Ayrshire Vintage and Classic Association. We had a bad year, which cost us all of our funds. We were at Eglinton Park at Kilwinning by this time, and it poured. And nobody turned up, except the people with their cars. But public didn't come in, and that's who we're relying on. So that has died a death.
Any cars from your past that would be quite nostalgic for any of our viewers?
Well, believe it or not, we rallied originally. I was the navigator, and my friend was Matt Neal from Comores. He was my driver. And we started off with a Sunbeam Rapier. Then we went on to a Vauxhall VX 490. Thereafter on to a Mini Cooper, and then a Mini Cooper S. And the Cooper S was really bored out. I think it was 1340cc. And it could really fly up through the gears at a maximum speed of about 100 miles an hour, but it got there very quickly. And I didn't realise until you look back at it, you were sitting in a tin box with very little in the way of protection compared to what they have nowadays, and rattling through the forest at 100 miles an hour, not to be recommended.
But I'm sure there's plenty of folk watching will remember these days and be jealous of you being in that car rattling through a forest.
Well, that's they want to try it first. It's when you bounce off the piles of logs that are at the side of the road. You know, that was quite a usual thing to do. That came out with quite a few dents in it.
And did Margaret join you in the car for some of these things?
No. She did the marshal, you know, at controls. She and the ladies in the car club, they sort of ran controls sometime. And she and a friend of mine, Billy Cuthbertson, and I were travelling up to the Red Hackle Rally, which started in Perth. And we got as far as, was it the Queen Victoria School at Dunblane, when we hit a Celtic supporter coming the other way. So that was the end of our participation in rallying.
Oh dear.
She never got to the start.
Very good. Anyway, let's move away from the nostalgia of cars and talk about the nostalgia of Burns. And I'll get Jim to talk to you a bit about your life with Robert Burns.
Okay, thanks, Douglas.
Bob, the first question is really easy. How did you get started with Burns?
How did I get started? Well, in 1970, I formed a folk group. With East Ayrshire Car Club, we went over to Arran every year. I ran an Arran Motorsport weekend, and we actually went to the White House Hotel at Lumlash, which has since been demolished. And there we decided we would have a folk night. And from there, it just snowballed. At that time, I probably only sang a couple of Burns songs, no more than that. And it's sort of, the Burns songs tended to take over a bit. Predominantly it was Scottish music I was doing, but that's where my interest in the Burns songs started, and from there it expanded. And I then, I should have said I was a secretary treasurer at the golf club for a while as well, and they had been having Burns suppers, but they were all meal events, and they took things to an extreme, and they were getting home about 3 in the morning. So they had stopped. The wives had complained, and they decided that they would like to have Burns suppers again. So I decided that the only way they're going to manage it was if we had mixed Burns suppers. And they ran very successfully from the early 80s up until about 3 years ago. It was run by predominantly Billy Niven and John Shirky, who are well known in the Burns circle, if you like, as speakers. And they were very, very successful. There was a waiting list, etc. And my interest just grew and grew. One of my neighbours in Mauchline was Dr. John Strawhorn, who was a recognised Burns authority at the time. And I got John to do the immortal memory at the first supper that I ran at the club, and told him that I didn't want anything too serious, because he was known for being dry as get out. He was my history teacher at school, so I could remember what he was like. So we then had an immortal memory from John Strawhorn, which actually involved Secretary Treasurer Bob and Captain Willie going round with Robert Burns playing a round of golf. And he'd lifted a divot which contained a lovely wee daisy. So he then wrote wee crimson tippet flower. And then he was at the side of the sixth, hit the ball into the banking, just as a wee moose was poking its head out of its moose hole. And thereafter he wrote wee Cúr Timorous Beastie, wee Slicket Cúr Timorous Beastie. And then it got as far as the 17th, which is along the woods of Baillie Estate. And he drove his ball into the woods. And he was gone for 3/4 of an hour. And when he came back out, he wrote, "The Bonnie Lass of Baillie." So that was the gist of John Strawhorn's immortal memory. And from then, I just get more and more involved, brought more and more songs in to our repertoire, and also did some speaking, did the Lasses, done a few immortal memories, and I've thoroughly enjoyed them. I've been very lucky with the people that I've been involved with over the years. I've been involved with John Shirky and Billy Niven, as I say, here at Mauchline. Willie Dick, I actually saw making his first speech to the Burns Club at an open night. Angus Middleton I've been with quite a few times as well. Even a chap, the name of Jim Thompson, I think he was involved with things. So, I mean, I've been at one point we actually did a thing for STV as well at Pussy Nancy's. We recorded an abbreviated Burns supper, if you like, there, and it was played quite regularly for a few years on the STV call-up thing, which, as far as I know, it might well still be there. But it was very enjoyable doing it.
I mean, obviously you get into Burns through music, you just told us that, and But I've heard you speak, and your immortal memory, I thought was very good. Have you no notion of doing a wee bit more of that in the future?
Once I lose my voice, I might, Jim. So far, I haven't been flung out of too many places so far. I still enjoy playing, although I'm doing it on my own now. We had at one point, we were the Castle Folk 4, then we just became Castle Folk. There was only 3 of us, and then it stayed as Castle Folk when one got married, and it left Tommy Scott and I, and now it's just me doing things on my own.
I don't know how many burn suppers I've been at over the years with Tommy and you, the two of you together, and it's a great night. However, you must have been at quite a few burn suppers in your time as well, and there must be a highlight or two in there that you can share with us.
Well, I think I've got to say that I got involved in going to the Masonic Club in Kilbarchan. And it was a good setup. They had a stage, and we had our PA system all set up. And what I didn't realise was that we had percussion, because we had actually started off not realising that the guys who were members of the club had been at the Rangers game in the afternoon. And they came home from the Rangers game and went straight into the Masonic Club and started drinking. And were still there when the burn supper started at 7:30. And we kept hearing this choom, 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 choom. And it turns out that it was actually a tray, a drinks tray, being played off the head of one of the guys that was there by the guy next to him. And I must admit, he was actually keeping perfect time. So we've stopped going there. It became too rowdy. But we've played really all over. We've played quite a few Masonic clubs. I mean, they're very much into it. I'm also the local convener for the National Burns Memorial Cottages at Mauchline here. And I must admit that Burns clubs and Masonic Burns suppers are a great source of income for the cottages. I mean, we sort of run on our investments and the income from these Burns clubs. So you try as much as possible to encourage the tray to be passed round. And that's from that. Newcumnock Burns Club have been very good to us, I must admit, as well, with their donations.
Bob, can you tell us a wee bit about the cottages? I'm sure our viewers would be really interested.
Well, the cottages initially, what happened was they got together a group of people really from Glasgow with Burns associations. And they decided that it was a disgrace that there was no national monument to Robert Burns. So they set up a company of them, maybe about a dozen or so involved, and they got an architect involved, and this became the tower, as it's commonly known in Mauchline, the National Burns Memorial. And behind it, there were a row of cottages. Now, this was all done in the late 1890s. It only took about 3 years from the first turf being dug to the tower opened. And the idea of the cottages was that it was for tenants coming from tied houses. You know, they finish with the farms, they finish as foresters, they finished anything that involved them being tied to the house and not having freedom of tenancy. So whenever their job finished, they were finished. So that's what the whole idea of it was. That so the first, now it was 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 were 5 houses there. There was also then developed a wee shop come tea room along that part. We then had 5 houses built on Turbolton Road, 5 houses built on Kilmarnock Road, and then 2 blocks of 2 houses. So we finished up with 20 in total. In the 1950s, we then erected what we call the pavilion, which is really like a common room, if you like, with a committee room, ladies and gents toilets, and a big function room. Unfortunately, this can't be used at the moment, but we have in there indoor bowls, we have darts, we have burn suppers in there, you know, a good annual burn supper for the cottagers. We also have various fundraising things, but obviously this year it's all been very restrained. There were 8 single houses, if you like, bed sits, but we've combined 2 lots of those together. So we've now finished up, we've got 18 tenants, and they're all at very, I suppose, not restricted rents, but they're actually sponsored by us. We've been very fortunate with our investments, and as a result, the old folk, as I call them, some of whom are younger than me, get a very reasonable rent. And there is a waiting list, and there's been a waiting list for quite a few years now.
Very good. And you still operate as a charity, presumably?
Oh yes, it's a charity. Yeah.
So obviously this year the many burn suppers that would normally be sources of your income by, in the case of New Kilmarnock, we pass a tray around the hall, and we usually get a decent collection for the Burns homes. Presumably that's going to be a bit more difficult this year. So if anyone's watching this and is interested in making a donation to the Burns homes, I'm sure you'd be happy to receive that.
Oh, we'd be more than delighted. We're very lucky. We do get donations, people leaving us money in wills as well. We've quite a few of the houses were erected with bequests from people in the past. I don't expect we would get that now, because the cost of erecting a house has gone up substantially since it was originally. But no, we rely on the income from our investments, from donations, and from income from burn suppers, such as the newcomer.
Well, with your permission, Bob, we'll put a link to your website on the final page of this podcast, in case anyone has got some surplus funds they'd like to share with you.
By all means, Douglas. Is that you volunteering, or was it Jim's money volunteering?
I think that we're going to have a virtual burn supper this year as a club. It'll not be the size of the normal burn supper, but I think there'll be a kind of metaphorical tray needs to go around. You know, some virtual tray needs to go around, so as we can all send the treasurer a few bob, and I'm quite sure we'll be doing something. And I would encourage anybody else having a virtual event to try and do the same. Yeah,
it'd be excellent, Jim. Yeah, we are very reliant on that as an income, and it's about running at about 50% of what it was last year. Fortunately, before the first lockdown came, there had been quite a few burn suppers. So we got income from that, but there's been very little since then. But we actually cater very well for them, because we have a gardener who tends to the grounds, and we as the trustees pay for that. We pay for all the upkeep of the cottages as well. They're now all centrally heated, they're double glazed. I've just had last year the rear of the cottages all painted. They were grey rough cast before, and now it's very tastefully done with a sort of magnolia paint to that, which is a big improvement on what was there when you saw all the patches. But no, we do tend to try and keep them as well as we can. But the unfortunate thing is, the chimneys in particular are of Ballochmyle sandstone, and they have become a source of water ingress. and considering that they've got to be taken down stone by stone and then rebuilt, taken down to below roof level, a lead safe put in to stop water ingress, then built back up. And the planners have insisted that we can't take them down because they say the chimneys are iconic, which is not quite the word I would use, and we fell out about it. But considering it costs somewhere about £2,500 to £3,000 to do each chimney in that basis, we've already done, I think, about half of them, but there are 27, I think, chimneys in total. So you can see from that, it's quite an outlay.
A bit of a challenge.
It is indeed, yeah.
Anyway, let's get you back to your music. I wondered if we could persuade you to perhaps give us a wee song. I know that you would normally play with an instrument, but Zoom doesn't do instruments any favours, but perhaps you could give us a song.
Well, if you like, I will do that. You're in my study here where I do my work, but also, as you can maybe see in the background now, my guitar sits there with the music stand. And every now and again, I get fed up doing work. I just turn around, pick up my guitar, and on the music stand, I think we'll have mainly Burns songs that will be on there. I would think so anyway.
So it's not pick up my guitar and play just like yesterday.
Well, I could try it, but you not say it's not very good.
The problem is that sometimes Zoom takes notes out. So
right. Well, I mean, I can sing unaccompanied without any bother at all, Douglas. I mean, two of my favourite songs, I don't think really need musical accompaniment as such. Of All the Earths is one that I do, and I do it unaccompanied anyway.
Lovely.
So I'll try that and see. You can tell me whether it's, wait till I clear my throat. It's this bronchitis. Wait, I'll play a C. I'll at least start in the right key. I don't know whether I'll finish in it or not. Of all the earths the wind can blow, I dearly like the west, for there the bonny lassie lives, the lassie I love best. There's wild woods grow and rivers row, and many a hill between. But day and night my fancy's flight is ever wi' my Jean. I see her in the dewy blurs, I see her sweet and fair. I hear her in the tuneful birds, I hear her charm the air. And there's no a bonny flower that springs by fountain, shaw, or green. There's no a bonny bird that sings, but minds me, oh my Jean.
Well done, Bob.
Excellent. Well,
Thank you.
You made a wee mistake there, Bob, when you mentioned that there were two songs that you'd be able to sing. So maybe a wee bit further on in this podcast, we could get the second one, if that would be okay.
Well, the other one that I do, yes, it's one that I always tell everybody. I learned this at primary school. And the reason that I learned it was because my primary school teacher, who later went on to become the headmaster at Sorn before he passed, was a man by the name of Willie Hale. And the reason that we always got extra music was because he fancied Miss Morton, the music teacher. So there we
Well, before we
We'll
get
come
to the
back
stage,
to that later.
yeah. Within the Burns story, is there anybody in particular that you have got an interest in?
You mean characters from Burns, or
Yeah.
do you mean
Characters from Burns?
I'm really fascinated by his pals in Mauchline. I really think that they were a great influence in him, and also I think they led him astray quite a bit as well. But I think Robert Burns himself is just so all-consuming that maybe I concentrate more on him than anything else.
Yeah.
As far as Burns, people who are doing Burns suppers at the moment, I think I've already mentioned most of the ones that I've been involved with. Angus Middleton, who does more Burns suppers in a year than most folk do in a lifetime. He's actually a loss this year because they've been cancelled left, right and centre. So Angus is finding that he's having to work instead of going to Burns suppers. Willie Dix, Willie Dix, another one. I spoke to Willie fairly recently there, and I think he'll be at a loss during January, February and March as well. And I've had a couple of phone calls from Niven and Shirky to say there'll no be any Burns suppers this year, not even the one up at the cottages. That there's just so many people within the area of Mauchline, and there's anywhere from Cumnock, Mauchline, Terbolton, Anbang. I mean, that the number of folk in that area who can do, you could go around there and pick any 6 people virtually from those and have an absolutely fantastic Burns supper. I mean, with Mauchline Burns Club, we did 2 Burns suppers in consecutive nights to celebrate the anniversary up at we had it up at the field at Misgill in a marquee. The first night was done all by local people. The second night by big names. And my opinion, the first night was far superior to the second night. And that was all done by people from the immediate area.
There's a great depth of talent in Mauchline and area, and I'm glad you get a shout out to John Strawhorn, because one of my favourite books the odd time, I'm going to say, is The Issue at the Time of Burns, and Strawhorn's the man behind the whole of that, to be honest with you.
It was indeed.
And a character and a half. I didn't know him well, but I knew him, and he was certainly a character. And I'm really pleased you mentioned Shirky and Niven, because if there are 2 stalwarts in Ayrshire in terms of Burns, I would put them right to the front. And wonderful if you phone and you ask for a favour. I've never had John Shirky once say no. Great man.
But the problem with that though is, Jim, that Shirky forgets to take a note of when he's supposed to be places. And he quite often double books, and people get phone calls the night before saying, could you help me? It's not the first time that I've had the call in the afternoon to go and do something for him in the evening because he's forgotten to be in touch or he's forgotten to write it down. I was his vice captain at the golf club as well when he was captain, and the reason that he got me there was because he said about the what is it, the hell of hangman's whip to keep the wretch in order. He quoted Burns when he appointed me as his vice captain, and I've got to say that 1997, so that would be the 200th anniversary of the death of Burns, wasn't it? John was captain and I was vice captain, and the normal thing was that the captain chaired the Burns supper, but he asked me if I would chair it instead so that he could do the immortal memory. He got into an immortal memory with not a note in front of him. And he finished up, he sat down when he burst into tears. He had got so involved in Burns and Burns's life that he just couldn't take it any further. And that's one of the most memorable Burns suppers I think I've ever been at. And I've been at a lot.
He's a real character, and he gives of his time. I mean, I don't know how many times I've phoned him and asked him to open up that museum in Turbolton for, you know, visitors coming from all the place. In fact, all the world. And he, if he can't manage, he'll get somebody to do it.
He'll get somebody. Gavin Barry's very good at standing in for that as well. And we Danny Beard. I mean, there's a whole crowd of these lads. I mean, they formed AMBA, which was the Ayrshire Masonic Burns Association. And I mean, they're very, very active, and they're very good with their time as well, Jim, I must admit. I think I'm beginning to think I must be an honorary member.
I just find it a wee bit cheeky that he's leading you in with verses for epistles to a young friend, given
That's
his
exactly. I just couldn't get it. Yeah, it was that was how where it was. What is it? The hat. Oh.
Feels Tigers what direction order. It's sort of epistle to a young friend. I think it's a bit.
That's it. That's what it is. Yeah. But no, he's quite a lad, and I mean, Niven and he doing the Twa Dugs has got to be seen. It's unbelievable.
Well, Niven is the best epistle to a young friend I have ever heard.
Is that right?
Aye, it's special. It's special, and don't get me wrong. It's the only thing I recite nowadays if I'm pushed, but it's just special. It really is.
Yeah. They're both so tied up in it, Jim. And I mean, I find it almost impossible to turn them down. I mean, if they phone me up and ask me to do something, I'll do it because I'm really pleased at being there with them. I take a great delight in that.
You've also got the advantage of sitting in Mauchline, where Burns that's where Burns exploded into life, really. And it's all around about you. And I mean, the Burns Club are involved with Pussy Nancy's and the Kip Geard and all these things, and you're at the heart of that too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it used to be when we had the Burns suppers out at the clubhouse, Shirky's comment was that when Burns was heading into the woods at Ballachmyle, he probably walked straight past the front of the clubhouse. But he hastened to add that the clubhouse wasn't built at that time.
Very good. Well, Bob, I think we're beginning to run out of our time, so I wonder if we can persuade you into that second song now.
Well, if you just give me a second, I will just give myself a note, and we'll see where we go from there. Just caught my fingers on my capo there.
I was going to say I wouldn't think that note will help you much.
No. I will. Ye banks and braes of bonny Doon, how can ye bloom sae fresh and fair? How can ye chant, ye little bird, and I sae weary, full of care? Thou break my heart, thou warbling bird that wantons through the flowering thorn. Thou minds me, oh, departed joys, departed never to return. Oft hae I roved by bonny Doon to see the rose and woodbine twine, and ilka bird sang o' its love, and fondly say did I with lightsome hair, I put a rose whose sweet upon its thorny tree. And my false lover stole my rose, but as she left the thorn with me. Okay.
Well done, Bob. Well done.
Thank you.
It's a lovely, lovely song. That was one of the first ones I learned when Moira Anderson was my music teacher at primary school.
Was she indeed? I was Miss Morton with the frilly blouse. Always remember that. She wore frilly lace blouses, and Willie Hale was my form teacher, and he fancied her something terrible.
Very good. Have we got anything else you want to ask, Bob, Jim?
No, I thoroughly enjoyed the song, and I love the song to bits, but I have yet to hear a woman singing the song, and it's Burns wrote it with the woman's idea in mind, and
yeah,
it's, I mean, when you know the story of the song, and I'm sure all Burns, I'm not going to bore people with that, but it's just, I quite honestly have heard that, I don't know how many, hundreds or thousands of times, and I've never yet to this day heard a woman doing it.
Is that right? Well, my mother used to sing it quite regularly, but to be perfectly honest, you're better off not hearing her singing it.
It's just when you were singing, I can feel the hair and the tingle down the back of my legs with that song, because I think it's just it's so melancholy. It's so it's just, I mean, it breaks your heart to hear the words. It really does. Yeah. I'm getting waddling now, and I've not even been drinking.
We've only got your word for it, Jim. We can't smell your breath.
Well, that's a sure sign that it's maybe time for us to close this. So it really just leaves me with the opportunity to say to you, Bob, thanks very much for giving up your time and telling us a little bit about your life with Robert Burns. It was great to listen to you, and I'm sure our viewers will be delighted to hear your story. Thanks very much, Bob.
Thanks a lot, Douglas. And you as well, Jim. And I'm delighted to have done it. I hope I didn't bore you to death.
It was great. Thanks, Bob.